Hello and welcome to the Sensibly Speaking podcast. This is Chris Shelton, the critical thinker at large.
And this is Ruth McLeod, the Southern Atheist.
And we are coming to you, it is now March, and this is, show number 30?
Who knows?
Yeah, and we're just rolling them out here. I'm actually really excited because I got a new camera. And I've saved up my pennies, and
He's been geeking out for like a week.
Totally. Because what we're shooting now with this camera that is shooting in 4K, and I'll be putting it up on, in HD on YouTube, but it's really super high quality. Like I could show you things.
He's showed me a graph.
It's awesome.
He drew it for me.
It's awesome. Yeah, me and graphs. So it's anyway, the idea being that this show and my channel and everything has always been a work in progress, and I'm trying to learn as I go and that sort of thing. And sometimes the audio gets screwed up, and sometimes the video gets screwed up and stuff. And in fact, we already shot next week's episode. We did a Skype interview this last weekend with John Atack, and that'll be up next week.
Yep.
Great interview. It's really nice. But the video just died. I mean, it was an atrocity against humanity. It was so bad. Trying to record the Skype and the video and everything, it just didn't go.
Okay, as much of like a geeky person you are about videos and stuff, I have a feeling it's not that bad.
It was bad.
You're just
bad.
Okay.
Yeah, it was bad. So
I was trying to help you out.
Yeah, no, it was. I sucked. I blew it. So.
Lord knows I didn't help.
It was bad. So anyway, but we did salvage the audio, and of course this is a podcast first, so that video interview is going up next week. But that all happened actually a day or two before I got my new camera. So no more of that.
Could have been.
Yes. So anyway, thank you for your patience out there and putting up with some of my shenanigans in the quality department. But we're happy now that we've got this awesome new devices to keep us going. And also, talking about comments and whatnot, we got some great feedback from the show last week.
Yeah, we did.
Kind of more than I thought. I thought I was talking a lot.
Well, I'm not trying to put myself down or anything, but I know that, a lot of people listen to our show because they watch your other videos. And so, it's not like I'm not great, because I am. No, I know I am. I'm fantastic. But I do know a lot of people like to hear your opinion. So whenever you do monologue, and I do give you a lot of crap for it, but it's playful crap. It's playful banter. I think it's great that you come prepared. Sometimes I just show up.
Yeah, well, it's all good. And that's and like this week, there's no monologue or anything, but sometimes I feel like I get something I want to say and stuff, and It's nice to get positive feedback and also critical feedback,
right?
And we did get some of that.
Good.
And I wanted to encourage anybody who hasn't seen the show last week to check it out, because we went over some pretty important stuff that'll probably set the stage for future shows in terms of digging deep into the economy and the government spending, and government situations and politics and whatnot. I think, like we said last week, we never really intended for this to be a political show, but it just begs for...
That seems to be where we need the most sensibly speaking things.
Exactly.
So it happens.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to, without being conceited or weird, I'm trying to be critical thinking.
Okay.
And demonstrate that to everybody. Trying.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
No, and I'm sure it comes. I think anytime, either just the two of us and our listeners, or anybody comes together and we have a good conversation, or any chance that I have at least to be able to listen to someone smarter than me talk, it's fantastic. Not that I'm saying you're smarter than me.
I'm not.
Maybe on some.
I'm not.
On some topics you are, and it's not a matter of I'm dumb and you're smart. It's just I think it's great to have a moment, sit back and take in new information, whether it's in agreement with what my personal thoughts are, or not, I think it's good to have them in your head, which is, I think it's a very sensible thing. So we definitely appreciate anybody giving us any kind of feedback, whether it's about what we're talking about, how we're talking things, reminding us that we are a podcast first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, got that message. So anyway, working on the quality issues. But also, another thing that I actually read this week was the importance of conversation, the importance of feedback, and of other people's ideas. I think we sometimes, I don't know where this idea comes from exactly, but sometimes we get this idea that we have to pull in our flippers and think for ourselves, and it's all up to us, and we're the only ones who can decide what's true or not. And we don't get feedback or have conversations or dialogue with other people, whether they're smarter or not. Sometimes another person can give you a perspective on something that
exactly
you'll just never see on your own.
But I like the concept of, I need to pull myself in and I need to figure this out for myself, because I think if someone doesn't have a good balance of doing that and listening outside, then you're just going to turn into a big sheep.
For sure. It's a balance of these two things,
right,
because you can go, again, that pendulum swing, you can go too far in either direction, and that's actually one of the reasons why we are doing this show. And not just me doing this show. Like when I started doing this.
I thought it was going to be like, I'm the sheep and you're like the far.
Oh my God, no. I mean,
where you were going with that.
No, totally. For the fact that you give me things and our viewers give us things. Never would have thought of it.
Outside of the podcast, Chris and I have actually had many conversations where our voices get raised. And then I sit there for a second and I look at him and I think, why are we friends sometimes? Like we really disagree on this. But we should probably do that more on the show. I think it might be a little bit more.
Yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for? Dynamic.
Dynamic, yes. Entertaining.
Sure.
Yeah, exciting.
Entertaining, except I need to go have a freaking Twizzler or something afterwards because I'm pissed.
Okay, good. And on that note, there was, just on this isn't really news, but it's just something I wanted to talk about on the Sensibly Speaking side of things. There was a BBC article recently. This was actually published in January, but I was just made aware of it. And it's called "The Man Who Studies the Spread of Ignorance." And just want to go over a couple points on this. Ignorance is almost a product. It's a quantifiable thing you can create. It's not just a lack of knowledge. And I was fascinated by this article and the concept of this, especially because marketing and PR and mind control techniques or population control techniques or information control is something I find fascinating on a personal level and on a sociological level, right? Mm-hmm. And this article talks about this guy, and I'm just going to read the beginning parts of it to kind of set the stage of what this is. This is this BBC article. In 1979, a secret memo from the tobacco industry was revealed to the public. Called the Smoking and Health Proposal and written a decade earlier by the Brown and Williamson Tobacco Company, it revealed many of the tactics employed by big tobacco to counter anti-cigarette forces. Now, older folks here, older folks, might remember that in the 70s is when, at least from my experience, smoking started really becoming at an educational level, at school kids level, a bad thing. Now, if that happened earlier, that's before my experience, but I remember in the 70s really learning and giving my parents a ration of shit all the time about smoking, to the point where my mom one time told me to shut up. Right? It was like, I'm going to smoke and you're not going to say anything about it, and I would just fume, right? So this, the anti-cigarette forces had been becoming more and more effective, right? And now, these days, smoking's you what?
Yeah, anywhere you go now, you'll get dirty looks.
Right, but in the 50s,
yeah,
if you didn't smoke, it was almost like you were getting dirty looks. It was totally different.
It was
a
a little
totally different.
Yeah, it was kind of square.
It was interesting. It's interesting how that that was. And so it says here in one of the paper's most revealing sections, it looks at how to market cigarettes to the mass public. Now, this isn't key. This is a direct quote from this report. Doubt is our product, since it is the best means of competing with the body of fact that exists in the minds of the general public. It is also the means of establishing a controversy. So this quote and this revelation piqued the interest of a guy named Robert Proctor, who was a science historian at Stanford University, and he started delving into the practices of tobacco firms and how they had spread confusion about whether smoking caused cancer. Now, a lot of people might look at this and go, oh yeah, I remember that. Big tobacco, of course they did that, and they spent billions, and this was a whole thing, and boy, we sure showed them, ha ha ha, and overcame that. But in the 60s and 70s, man, this was like a really big controversy. We've come through the controversy because, the truth has sort of won out, but it took a lot of work to make that happen, right, on the part of a lot of people. And the whole time, all that work had to be done because the cigarette, big tobacco, was purposefully obfuscating the situation by actively spending billions of dollars promoting the fact that it wasn't really clear whether smoking was bad for you or not. Like, nobody on the science side of it had any question about whether it was bad for you or not.
I'm sorry.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
I mostly grew up in the 90s, and so school age was me for from literally 1990 till I graduated high school in 2002.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, of course smoking is bad for you. It always has been for me.
Right.
So the thought process of, is it bad for us? We don't know. It's like, you're pushing smoke through your lungs. Come on now. And even with, like, just not to de-railroad us, but even with, like, the marijuana industry right now, if I were to get high, don't give me a joint. I'm not going to put smoke in my lungs. I'm sorry. My elementary school education in Florida still was able to accurately depict to me that is bad. That's not what you want. I remember the poster on the wall that had a woman who looked like her skin was falling off. And they were like, this is what your body looks like on the inside. And it's like, no, I don't want that. That's disgusting. I've seen way too many diseased lungs. No thanks.
Right.
So that's an interesting concept to me.
It was absolutely that way.
Right.
It was absolutely a confusing thing, and there used to be billboards and print ads, Marlboro Man. I mean, these were things, Okay, so the point of this is not to talk about cigarettes. It's just that is a very easy to see example because we've run the curve.
Yeah.
Right? We've come through to the other side of that where we know it's bad. But this business of spreading ignorance, right, which they spent decades working on and doing, because I think the original studies on cigarettes go back to the 40s or 50s.
Really?
I mean, this is old stuff, right? Anyway, so Robert Proctor coined the study of deliberate propaganda or of ignorance, like deliberately spreading ignorance, he called it agnotology. Agnotology comes from agnosis, the neoclassical Greek word for ignorance or not knowing, right? And then ontology, which is the branch of metaphysics, deals with the nature of being. So where you have, an agnostic, right? I don't know, right? Which I think are great words to have.
Yep.
Here he's taken that word and said, well, now we're gonna say agnotology is the study of willful acts to spread confusion and deceit, usually to sell a product or win favor.
Do you ever see that movie, Thank You for Smoking?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
I love that movie.
Yes. Great example in a comedy form of how that gets done.
Aaron
right?
Eckhart.
Right.
He's pretty.
Yeah.
But that's definitely like when you brought this to me and we were talking about this, that was definitely something that came to both of our minds.
Yeah, immediately.
Yeah.
Because that's what the movie's all about.
Exactly.
And when you have somebody who is silver-tongued, funny, personable, right?
I could do this. Then,
you want to believe that person. Aaron Eckhart played a guy that people wanted to believe.
He's so pretty.
So Proctor says here, I was exploring how powerful industries could promote ignorance to sell their wares. And then he says, ignorance is power.
Yes.
I like that. And agnotology is about the deliberate creation of ignorance. In looking into agnotology, I discovered the secret world of classified science and thought historians should be giving this more attention.
Huh.
So, and by classified science, of course, we're talking about scientific studies that get done for industry, and then they sit on it.
Yeah.
Because Big Tobacco had the scientific studies in I believe it was 40s, definitely by the 50s.
Right.
They knew it was bad, and they sat on it.
Well, I mean, the whole thing, back with Aaron Brockovich, PG&E, basically had the same thing. They figured something out, but if they just kind of sit on it and nobody knows that their water is contaminated, then we don't have to pay them off.
Right. That's right.
Until a giant lawsuit comes along.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's kind of the same thing where, you have the science, but you hold on to the science so that you don't have to produce the science.
Exactly. And now another example of this was President Obama. Was he born in the U.S.? Was he not? The whole birther movement, right? This is, again, a specific example of a willfully spreading ignorance on an issue that was actually, they knew all about it. There was no question. And then suddenly there's questions, right? And here's an important aspect of this, which I'm sure any of you could see this all over the place. Proctor explains that ignorance can often be propagated under the guise of balanced debate. For example, the common idea that there will always be two opposing views does not always result in a rational conclusion. This was behind how tobacco firms use science to make their products look harmless and is used today by climate change deniers to argue against the scientific evidence. This balance routine has allowed the cigarette men or climate deniers today to claim that there are two sides to every story, that experts disagree, creating a false picture of the truth, hence ignorance.
Yeah, I don't feel played at all. No.
Exactly. So I just wanted to throw that out there. This is a fascinating topic. There's a lot more to the article you guys can check out. And I think that knowing, again, my view of things, I always feel like if I start going too far down this path that we're going to start talking about conspiracies. Right? So I always try to put this guard on it, right?
Whenever I hear about a new conspiracy, I immediately want to send it to you.
I just don't even want to.
Should I send you the Katy Perry one?
I already saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked. Yeah, I saw that actually. Yeah. So, this sort of article or this sort of thinking can give somebody the idea that, it's all a conspiracy. And it's no, this is PR and marketing is what this is. This is actually like people get paid a lot of money to do this. This isn't some little closed group of circle of men, plotting, what they're going to do. This is discussed. This is talked about. This is a known tactic that exists in the PR world, right? And I think the more we, the sheep, are aware of this stuff, the more we can sort of recognize it when it's happening. Because I'll tell you, in the field of climate change, I sure as hell wish people could see that they actually are, subscribing to propaganda when the science is pretty clear.
Yeah.
About the fact that we are causing change to occur on this planet.
Right.
We are doing that.
Right.
We're not insignificant creatures on this planet.
That's not even a new one. It's not new. We know this. My personal favorite is when lawmakers make a requirement for abortion providers to tell their patients that abortion will cause breast cancer.
Right. Imagine that. Imagine somebody actually coming up with that line. Somebody had to actually invent that idea.
I have not seen a study that backed that statement up. But it's a requirement that they have to say it in at least Mississippi, I think.
Right.
But are you freaking serious?
Right. So here you have this information. Now, I haven't seen any studies on it either, and I'm just going to say right now, I'm assuming that is not a true statement, right? That abortion will not cause breast cancer. I can't connect those dots in my head.
I've spoken with doctors; they can't either.
Okay. So here you have a created ignorance.
Right.
Right, where somebody walks in and they're actually stupider when they walk out.
Right.
Because they've now been told something that isn't true.
Right, and that is essentially the problem. You know, Chris and I and most of our, presumably all, if not most of our listeners, are actually able to take a step back and say, okay, let me make sure I have enough resources and speak to enough people who know to be able to make sure that this is an accurate statement. Whereas if you have someone, say a teenager, who's trying to get an abortion, literally have no idea, and they hear all this stuff, it's going to freak them out. And, you know, and it's not just this, it's any argument where somebody pulls something like this. You're going to have those people, those sheep. And I hate calling them that because that sounds very negative.
It is, and it's not a term I'm going to be using a lot, but it's just kind of a joke, you know.
It's not that they're stupid. It's just, and we've talked about this before, it's that they're ignorant, and not that ignorant is a negative word. We've made it into a negative word.
Right.
But they're ignorant to it, and they don't know how to overcome that. And you hear it from a source that you supposedly trust. For no apparent reason sometimes.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. And it's just something to be aware of is the fact that it gets created. And I'm not talking about being aware of it for, you know, yeah, of course it does. I knew that. I'm talking about it for us. Like look in the mirror. Like, how does this affect all of us? You know what I mean? Not just how you're totally on top of it and, you know, everybody else is just waiting to catch up, you know?
Yeah. Like the climate change one is one of those where somebody else's ignorance can directly affect me because we've only got this one planet. Sorry.
That's right. Exactly.
We're getting close to finding others that are similar, but it's not like I can hop on a bus and go to like, what is it, Kevlar 48 or whatever it is. It's not happening.
No, and it won't be anytime soon.
No.
So, okay.
I don't want to die in a snowstorm in the middle of July. Do you understand?
Exactly.
It's my birth month. I don't want that happening.
No, that would be bad.
Grumble.
That would be bad. So.
Anyway.
All right, in the news. So, oh my God. You know, this is just, I can't even believe this is a thing. And if you live in the South and anything that we're about to talk about is offensive to you, I'm sorry, but too bad.
I have to go over here for a minute.
Okay, Mississippi Governor, April named Confederate Heritage Month. Now, I've got fairly strong opinions about this, but first let's go over the story. Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant is proclaiming April as Confederate Heritage Month, but without mentioning slavery. His proclamation was posted to the Mississippi Sons of Confederate Veterans website. Mississippi Sons of Confederate Veterans website, but not to the governor's site. He signed it days before legislators killed bills that would have either removed the Confederate battle emblem from the 122-year-old state flag or stripped state money from colleges and local governments that refused to fly the current banner. So remember all that hubbub about getting rid of the Confederate flag and all that? Well, they're canceling all that. That hubbub is past. That's no longer in the media anymore, and let's just quiet down and get back to our good Confederate ways.
It's not even the right battle flag. See, that's what pisses me off. Know your damn history. That's not even the right flag. It's not even... I'm so mad right now.
Yeah.
I can't even look over there. I'm just mad.
Yeah. Now, Bryant's spokesman Clay Chandler said previous governors, Democrat and Republican, have issued similar proclamations for Confederate Heritage Month. In other words, it ain't just us Republicans.
I'm sorry, us Republicans?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, just saying
what?
Them.
Oh.
Them, not us. Them.
We were about to have a conversation.
Yeah, no. Governor Bryant believes Mississippi's history deserves study and reflection, no matter how unpleasant or complicated parts of it may be, Chandler said. Like the proclamation says, gaining insight from our mistakes and successes will help us move forward. Now, I agree with that statement, but here is what I don't agree with. Taking a symbol of something horrible, something awful, something that symbolizes man enslaving other men, men killing other men, right? The separation of the North and the South, and the war that occurred, the bloodiest war on United States soil, hundreds of thousands of people killing each other, fellow countrymen. Like there are brothers, families ripped apart over this. There's nothing about that period of time to like or admire. There's a lot from that period of time to learn from. There's a lot from that period of time to determine, let us please never ever do that again. And oddly, I'm going to invoke Godwin's law here, where I'm going to start talking about Hitler and Nazis. But here's why. I'm not comparing the South to a bunch of Nazis. That's not the point. The point is this. In Germany, it is illegal to fly the swastika. It is illegal to be a Nazi. It is illegal to walk around doing this. Like, they'll actually put you in jail for that, because they are deeply, horrifically ashamed of that period of time, and they don't ever want to repeat it again. And they go way out of their way to make sure that they don't repeat it again. And as an example, the reason Germans or German government is against Scientology is because they think it has the beginnings of a neo-Nazi type cult situation because of the things that it does, right? We could talk about that for hours. But my point is that that's why they're anti-Scientology. It's not because the Germans don't like religion, or they don't want people to be better, or they don't want people to get along, or anything like that. It's that they don't ever want anything ever coming up like Hitler did. We, on the other hand, glorify that period of time in our history as though it was something great and wonderful and something to be remembered forever. Like, this is some wonderful thing to look back on in those good old days, because them good old boys were fighting for our freedom, or some total asinine, absolute historical revisionist nonsense. And it kind of gets to me a little bit, because it's unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. I don't understand why that lesson wasn't learned the same way the Germans learned theirs.
Because it's not taught the same way.
It's crazy.
No, I am being very serious right now. As someone who grew up in the South, it's not taught the same way.
How is it taught? Enlighten me.
Yeah, we learn about slavery. Yeah, totally. But we also I heard a lot of, well, the North had slaves too. Well, it was people in Africa who were enslaving their own people and sending it to us. The first person who owned a slave was a black man in the United States. So we get that a lot. And then, of course, the battle flag, and I'm going to say that in quotes, because it's not the right flag. If you do any kind of flag history, or you will understand that that's not the right damn flag, but whatever. That is part of our, proud Southern heritage, born in the U.S. by luck, born in the South by the good grace of God, basically, is what I was always taught growing up.
Wow.
And the battle flag, the Confederate flag, the big, cross and stars or whatever the hell, it is almost as important as the as the American flag where I grew up. Like, there is, on the side of the highway, there's somebody who owns his own property, and he put up this huge flagpole with the biggest Confederate flag I have ever seen, and it's still flying out there to this day. Like, his neighbors are petitioning the city to try to get him to take it down.
Wow.
Because he has some smart neighbors, but this man is, like, absolutely refusing, and they're like, I have an aunt of mine who supports this Confederate History Month. Totally. All about it. Thinks it's a great idea. And when I moved up to Colorado, it's something that I didn't think I was ashamed of until I started talking more and more and more with people, and I started realizing how incredibly shameful it is that people in the South are just so in love with their history, and they try to downplay it, or, oh, well, we're just hardworking people, and, you know, sometimes slaves were better off being slaves. I've heard a family, and I laugh because I'm embarrassed.
Did somebody actually say that?
A family member told me that once. They were better off being slaves because then they had somebody to give them rules. Your face right now, just the complete picture of dumbfoundedness, is absolutely what the correct response. You know, they had meals, and they had a place to live, and they didn't get in trouble, and these are the kind of things that I grew up learning. Did I ever believe it? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But it's something whenever I go home I still deal with. I will still see people with the Confederate flag all over their cars, all over their hats, all over their shirts, all over their house, everywhere. And my own father has, you know, when they started the whole take the Confederate flag out of state capitals and, you know, off of schools and things, my father was pissed. He's like, this is our heritage. I'm like, yeah, Daddy, it's a heritage that we should be ashamed of.
Exactly.
And they're not. They're not. Because they will argue with you that the Civil War was not about slavery.
I think this sounds to be a perfect example of what we were just talking about.
There is a lot of other things that the Civil War was fought over. It wasn't just slavery.
It was not a single issue war. Of course it wasn't.
But
say slavery was not a major factor in that conflict is again professed ignorance.
I just get to the point where I don't even know what to say anymore. A lot of times I didn't know what to say growing up. What do you say? Because you're surrounded by this. Like, you are in a culture where people will get upset and they will confront you. And it's almost scary to me if I try.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well,
like, when I lived down there, I never had any kind of atheist symbols on my car or anything. I have a little Darwin fish now. But when I lived down there, absolutely not.
Right.
No way.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to describe how to feel, you know, how the feelings that come to mind with this. To have an education or a cultural background that leads your thought processes to a place where you would say and believe that slaves were better off being slaves. I have no words for the level of depravity of that thought process. It's a kind of insanity as far as I'm concerned.
Now we know why.
So
Ruth doesn't talk to some of her family members.
I get it. I really get it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we've made our position clear on
made a point.
Confederate Heritage Month.
Stupid as shit.
And
don't fucking do it.
And
dumbass Mississippi.
That is absolutely wackadoodle. Also in the news, this is a Bloomberg Business article from today. Quest for respect fuels Kim's nuclear bid despite sanctions. Now this has Kim, of course, being North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un. Un. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yeah,
I'll probably have like 4, 5 commenters.
It's un. It's 2 letters.
It's not un. It's un.
It's un.
Anyway.
Like buffoon.
Yeah, and I have a little reason for bringing this up. The international community is seeking to tighten the screws on North Korea's economy. But with Kim Jong-un motivated mostly by his quest for prestige at home, tougher United Nations sanctions may not dampen his nuclear ambitions. Hours after the UN Security Council unanimously passed sanctions targeting North Korea's banks, mineral exports, and cargo vessels, the country fired a volley of short-range projectiles. Kim ordered his troops to be ready to launch nuclear warheads at any moment, according to state media. His regime has already urged people to prepare for the impact of the penalties, the sanctions, of course, and called for greater economic self-reliance. Couple other points on this. At the heart of North Korea's defiance is Kim's ultimate goal of forcing the world to recognize his country as a nuclear power. And we'll talk about why that's important. And later on it says here, North Korea's government calls its nuclear arms a precious sword of justice, quote, that would prevent it from being toppled like regimes in Iraq and Libya. Shortly after the nuclear test, North Korea urged the Obama administration to, quote, get used to North Korea as a nuclear arms state. Many arms experts question North Korea's ability to produce nuclear bombs small enough to be mounted on long-range missiles. So I was, looking at this article only because, when you bring the word nuclear arms and nuclear power and people like Kim Jong-un in the same sentence, one would have reason to be nervous.
No.
One should have reason to be nervous.
No.
They have detonated a test nuclear explosion as far as I know.
Uh-huh.
This guy being a nuclear power is a frightening idea.
Uh-huh.
Now, there's a lot of...
Not shaking.
Bluster
Pretty strong over here.
Okay, good.
Pretty solid.
Wow. There's a lot of bluster to Kim Jong-un, right? He is young. He came into power in 2011. He was only... the people of North Korea only really became aware of him as a successor about a year before his father, died. Uh-huh. He has engaged in violent purges. killing people, his cabinet members.
No,
I think in
crazy.
February he killed his chief of staff.
He's killed his uncle by a pack of dogs.
Yeah, he's definitely wackadoodle,
he's
right?
He's a psychopath. Fine.
But
am I concerned about him being a nuclear power? Absolutely fucking not. By the way, precious, what is it called? Precious sword?
The precious sword of justice.
Okay, speaking of being Southern, do you know what we call precious things? Oh, precious. Aren't you precious? I literally am thinking of a small, not too bright, fluffy dog.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking of right now.
Right. So,
you precious.
While you might not be freaked out, I think other people might hear about this and might.
Whatever.
It's possible people might,
have
overreactions to this particular thing.
I want him to pull some shit with us. I would love to see him pull some shit with us. Because I think North Korea needs some damn freedom. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I don't disagree with you.
I'm not exactly excited about going to war with them or anything, but I would just like us to go, look, you guys are free, democracy, yay.
Yeah. Well, he's trying to prevent exactly that because I think Kim Jong-un is probably looking at the example of Libya and Iraq and thinking that could happen here, and he doesn't want anything like that, which is why he's rattling this nuclear saber.
Okay. I don't want to get involved with the way a country runs itself, especially when, they have the dictator. Fine, whatever. Let them be dark, silent, whatever. When they start pulling shit like this, am I afraid? Absolutely not. But am I excited at the concept of us being able to stomp out an evil, crazy, psychopathic dictator? Yeah, I am. Bring it on. I would love to see him threaten us.
Okay.
Because last week I was bitching about how much money we spend on military.
I wasn't going to say anything.
To use. Let's put that 15% or whatever to use and squash them like a bug and be done with it.
Yeah. Well, I wish it was that simple.
I'm the worst liberal ever.
That's pretty wild.
Every now and then my southern "let's get 'em" battle flag bullshit comes.
Well, I would not particularly think with a military option there, because I don't think we're in the right in doing that, and that's part of our foreign policy. No, I'm just saying if he
threatens us, that's what I'm saying.
Well, he's threatening us, but there's a reason for that, and that's actually why I brought this up. Right? He's doing that because. For a number of reasons, one of which is he's trying to gain the respect of his people. It's an attempt. I'm not saying it's a good attempt. Here's the thing. The guy is shaky in his power. He's shaky in his position. He's a little tiny pipsqueak country surrounded by superpowers who actually could do what we're talking about if they wanted to, and he needs to talk tough to prevent that from happening. And when you start talking tough with nuclear weapons, that's talking pretty damn tough.
Yeah, but I really just think it's talking. I don't think they have the ability to do this now. So let him talk all he wants. Puff out his little bitty precious chest and do what he wants.
Well, we'll see how this works out. I'm actually going to keep a little eye on this because I'm kind of curious how this is going to play out. What I'm hoping doesn't happen is that
we go in there.
Too many people take this seriously.
Oh.
Right? Because he's making noises that are meant to be taken seriously. He's firing off projectiles that are meant to show he's serious. So he's putting on a pretty good show of what somebody would do were they serious about this stuff.
I can't take him seriously when South Korea, as a tactic, puts on speakers and blasts K-pop at them. I'm sorry, I can't take your country seriously if that's going to get you.
Yeah, well, the reason why I take comfort in the idea that this is a lot of bluster is because, if you have like a cult, you have like a cult leader, you have like Scientology, right? And if that was a country, it would be North Korea, right? It's all talk. There's all bluster there. It's all like tough, whatever. And all the techniques that this guy runs on his population, I'm very familiar with all of that shit. And that's what he's doing, right? And the more bluster you see from this, I think the more we can be sure that he's, freaking out and being a scared little boy, right? That's what I think's happening there. But it's interesting to watch. And but it caught my eye because, like I said, he was throwing around the word nuclear, and that catches my attention.
And as it should. But keep in mind where the talk is coming from. I'm sorry. He's a psychopath. And if I was living in the country, I'd be petrified of him. But maybe this is because I'm a redneck American, and I'm just like, fuck it, bring it on. I've got 3 Cletuses behind me who are just itching to come bomb your ass. Do you understand? So
Right. Okay. Well.
Worst liberal ever. Worst feminist ever, too. Just worst.
All right. We're going to move on to our next segment here.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What?
Okay, so we're going to talk this week about something we actually put on hold for a couple weeks now because we've been, involved in so many other things.
So many great stuff is happening.
I know.
So.
Yeah. Well, this particular week we're going to talk about the dogmatism of science. I wanted to talk about this because it's been brought to my attention by some emails and some viewers, actually, and it's a good topic to talk about, which is, there's an idea of science. There's a theory of science. There is this subject, right, where you have scientific method, you have critical thinking, you have this purity of investigation and uncovering facts or positing ideas and gathering evidence and proving out whether your idea is likely to work or not, right? Because you can never know for sure. There's never 100% absolute truth in science, but you gather evidence and you do this whole thing and you follow this, right? And there sometimes can be this idea, especially I have seen in myself and amongst non-religious types, that science is sort of this holiest of holies.
Why do you keep looking at me whenever you say that?
I just because you're the president of the Denver Atheists, kind because that's why. I'm not saying you have this idea, but
feel like
I have.
I'm being attacked.
No. I'm not attacking. Actually, I'm just pointing out that I have encountered this idea and this viewpoint before. And I, of course, embraced science and critical thinking because I had lived, a good chunk of my life on the other end of the spectrum of pseudoscience and woo and nonsense beliefs and no scientific method. And so I embraced it because it's something that really brings a lot of sense to, your ability to think and rationalize and look at things. But we have to acknowledge the fact that human beings are the ones who are doing the science. And science covers a lot of different disciplines, a lot of different spectrums. But the fact that human beings are doing it automatically makes it not so holy and not so pure. And I wanted to, bring this up as a topic so that it, that I acknowledge that there are problems there, right? And in fact, some people, thankfully, a very, very few from my own experience, can get rather dogmatic about the holiness of science, right? That science never makes any mistakes, that science is always pure, that science is always great. And in the real world, when you actually get into the world of science and you look into studies and study groups and experimentation and government grants and where money comes from and how it's spent and things like that, you find all the foibles of human nature kind of in the same way that skeptics will claim religion has certain foibles, but not the same kind. Because I said I was going to say this, right? I've never seen a ring of science pedophiles get busted in daycare centers or whatever, or abusing little boys or anything like that.
Hey kids, you want to come try some science?
Yeah, you don't see that. What you do see is you see mistakes that are covered up. You see fraud. You see fraud, right? You see fraudulent studies get done or fraudulent conclusions pushed off or foisted off for money. Usually it's a follow the money sort of trail, or for status, right? Which again goes back to money. So I think that there is this theoretical idea of science, which is really wonderful, and it would be nice if scientists universally could live up to that model. But maybe that's somewhat analogous to trying to live up to the ideals presented by religion. And maybe that's another way of looking at it, right? Is you have this ideal of religion, and people want that to be true and look at it and, and like, yes, it's so great. And they, and a lot of things that shouldn't necessarily get a pass end up getting a pass because, God is great and Jesus is my savior and that sort of thing. And so the, priests, pedophiles get a pass by Catholics, and they shouldn't, right? Well, in the same way, scientists who commit fraud, scientists who falsify their results, scientists who cover up their mistakes rather than own up to them also shouldn't be getting a pass by pro-science people, right?
Where are they getting a pass?
In magazines, in universities. It was some specific examples of this were pointed out to me recently in some articles in Scientific American by certain people who are the head of have ties into big pharma or into universities and rely on a lot of funding coming in, have falsified the results of certain studies in order to keep that funding coming in. And
when they're found out, they continue to stay in these magazines.
They get a pass, yeah, because they
they
don't get called to the carpet. They don't get demoted from their position. They don't get fired.
Right. Okay. So they're in the court of public opinion.
They're
still great, or they don't know.
It hardly even makes it out into the court of public opinion. This is all in the academia circles,
right?
But it's still fraud,
right?
It's still disingenuous.
But I guarantee you, if the public knew about something like this, they would not accept it.
There are cover-ups. There are things that happen in this world of science that are very analogous to what happens in these other worlds that we.
Okay, but the whole priest little boy, or
it's not on. Yeah,
that went on for decades, if not longer.
Yeah.
And then when it came to light, people were incredibly upset.
Right.
So do you think that the public would be as upset, or maybe not, on the same scale, obviously?
It wouldn't be on the same scale because children aren't involved.
Right, of course.
Except for the fact that dots need to be connected between what those studies and fraudulent situations, lead to in terms of pharmaceutical products.
Yes.
Right?
I mean,
and
we
they
have
sometimes
the whole thing.
Trace those back to, the company produced a bad lot or this sort of thing. But the number of times this stuff gets traced all the way back, I don't see that a lot. I don't see that happen a lot.
Okay, but the guy who came out and made up his whole study about how vaccines cause autism, as soon as we figured that out, he was discredited. This whole thing, he is no longer a scientist as far as I'm concerned.
That's true.
So,
and yet that problem that he created still continues.
Among the most idiotic people I can ever think of.
I know, but it still continues.
But I will say this, with my job, people do have bad reactions to vaccines because our biology is different.
Okay.
So it happens. And something like that, people hear that and they, oh, well, see, there you go. That's the link. No, that's because you're an idiot. That's why you think there's a link.
Right.
But it's the intelligent people that I like to think who are capable of going, that was bullshit. We've determined that's bullshit. Drop it.
Yeah. Well, one, you need to give the intelligent people an opportunity to actually find out.
Yes.
And if it gets covered up to the point where it doesn't make it past
Which is
the
why
world
we
of
have
academia.
The peer review.
Okay.
What does religion have peer review?
Okay. No. And again, this is a point where in concept, I'm not trying to tear down the walls of science here or rip apart its foundations. I'm saying that in the real world, that sounds nice. And then when you find out that peer review doesn't get done or doesn't get done properly or is just as half-assed done as the original study was because they're trying to push something through because it involves money, and I happen to have firsthand knowledge of this actually from my Scientology time because I was all about anti-psych drugs. Uh-huh. And so I did a lot of research into psychotropic medications and the studies that get done to push those things through the FDA, and I can tell you that it is rife with corruption.
Okay, but the whole concept is that science has a structure for peer review. That's how it's done.
I know.
Whereas religion doesn't. So that's the main difference that I see here.
Well, they are big differences. I'm not trying to say that all science is just like religion. I'm just saying that the dogmatism that can occur with science, the taking it for granted that because it's science, it has to be true.
Who thinks that?
Oh, people definitely think that. You think people don't think that?
I think people who've been slammed in the face with real science still go, I don't know. I need more evidence.
Well, there's certainly some of that too. It's a broad spectrum.
That's not the way science is supposed to be.
Exactly my point. That's exactly my point. That it's not supposed to be like that, but that doesn't mean that sometimes it isn't. That's all I'm saying. I'm just bringing it up.
It's
just
not
saying
supposed to be that way because you're supposed to have accurate peer review, and it's supposed to be peer reviewed multiple times. It's basically supposed to be tested until it's no longer true.
That's right. But a healthy dose of skepticism is necessary even with peer-reviewed science.
Obviously. But religion doesn't have that. This is the way it is.
Right.
You have to have faith that this is the way it is, and if you believe differently, you're wrong. That's it.
Okay. But you've never seen anybody, you're honestly going to tell me you've never seen anybody with that attitude about science?
If I have, I don't think they're intelligent people.
Well, that's not the point.
No.
The point is, have you seen people who do that with science?
Of course I have, but they are not intelligent people.
I've seen very intelligent people who do that with science.
Then they're not intelligent people.
Okay.
We might have to take a commercial break. I need a Twizzler.
Oh.
That's not
Want a red
Twizzler.
vine?
That's not Twizzler.
Here is me with a peace offering.
That's shit. Red vine is shit.
Wow.
Well, they're not paying me to say any different.
Wow.
Just saying. Now there's Twizzler. But still,
I love red vines.
you're wrong. Now we're going to have a whole comment section about people telling us which one's better. Team Twizzler. I'm starting it. Making it a hashtag.
Team Red Vines. You know who to vote for.
You're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You're wrong.
Put it in the comments.
Incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
No, okay, but what other... You've got walls of text. What else do you have
that's
to say?
actually all I had to say about
really
that subject.
all that you had to say?
That is all I had to say about that.
Well, okay, I'm not going to argue and deny that people do this. I'm not... Obviously, they do.
Mm-hmm.
But those are not the kind of people that I want in my life.
Fair enough. I don't want people who falsify scientific findings in my life either.
But I mean...
But they're out there. It happens.
But there are some things that I am going to trust about science. I trust gravity. Gravity makes me its bitch every day.
Fair enough.
Every day.
I don't think that Newton and Einstein have falsified their findings on that.
There you go.
However, there are some things that have been scientifically studied that should be regarded with a certain degree of skepticism because that's just a healthy thing to do. That's my point.
No, and I agree with you with that.
Good. That's it. That's my point. We agree.
I'm not okay. This is not okay. I have to roll.
Okay. So, there's no sacred cows in science. There are sacred cows in religion. There are some people who have sacred cows in science. And I think you're actually nailing it that such people should be regarded with skepticism and contempt because they have the wrong attitude about it.
Contempt. I just...
That's all.
Was that something that we really need to be reminded of?
Yeah.
You think?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Really?
More than one viewer has sent me comments and emails about that exact thing.
That we need to remind people of this?
Because they perceive that when you have a pro-science platform where science can do no wrong, or it's perceived that you're saying that science can do no wrong, and that science is the solution to everything. And again, I have certainly made statements that I can see why people would think that. Then it needs to be said that science, too, should be regarded, because it's done by people, with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Fine, healthy dose of skepticism. But if you come at me with religion and somebody else comes at me with science, guess which one I'm going to pick?
Of course, and me too. I will go with science every time.
Because religion is literally made up.
Yeah, I get it.
Literally.
I know.
At least with science, they have to prove their shit and give me evidence. Religion doesn't have that nonsense.
Right.
Who needs it, right? Faith. Best concept anyone's ever come up with. Faith. Could sell people anything. Sold people on a girl who got knocked up. Jesus. Thing.
Baby Jesus.
Baby Jesus.
Fair enough. So that's the reminder, is that, a healthy dose of skepticism will never hurt you in any realm or subject or subject matter.
None of you needed to know this, right? Please tell me none of you needed to know this information. Like, you already knew. This was... Do you have doubt in our listeners?
Yes.
You have doubt in our listeners?
I have a healthy dose of skepticism.
He doubts you. He doesn't have faith like I do.
And we're going to move right along now.
We need to.
Oh, we are so moving along now. So, actually with that, we're actually at the end of our show. So,
I'm skeptical of that.
Yeah, no, that's we're at the end here. So,
God. This is a train wreck.
I love it. I actually love this right now.
I'm gonna go home and sleep. Do you understand? Go home and just lay down.
Next week, remember, audio only, interview with John Atack. Actually, something to look forward to. I hope you guys enjoy it. And then the week after, we will have more beautiful 4K video. And we have some interviews lining up for the coming weeks after this that I'm very excited about. More science-based stuff. We're going to be talking about evolution. We're going to talk about DNA. We're going to be talking about science stuff and new discoveries in those fields that I am absolutely fascinated by. And if I'm fascinated by it, we're talking about it. So,
for days.
Yeah, that's right.
Or I'm sorry, an hour.
Yeah,
same difference.
I just like to bring all you guys along in my journey of discovery with this stuff because I'm
and yet somehow
fascinated by it.
We are all here voluntarily.
Yeah.
To just ride this ride with you.
Bam. So, if y'all have any comments for us,
hashtag Twizzler.
Yeah, hashtag Red Vines. Put them below. And, hashtag Red Vines. We will see you guys next week. Any email, of course, Chris at sensiblyspeaking.com or
Ruth at sensiblyspeaking.com.
Bam. Okay, guys, we will see you next week. Thank you very much for listening to our little tirades and disagreements and fun times.
We're still friends. Thanks, guys.